Hi everybody, and welcome back to our AWS Solutions Architect Associate Sample Exam question videos, and I'm pleased to be bringing you our third question from the AWS Solutions Architect Associate Exam. These are sample questions that you can find on the internet, and there's a total of 7 for the exam, and we're going to go through all 7. Sorry, there's been a bit of a delay between the second question and this one, but finally we've got up to the third question, and it's about to come up in front of your screen very shortly. So first up, we just talk about the services that this question covers, and it's going to be CloudFront and S3. And the source of the question is from the AWS Solutions Architect Associate Sample Exam, question number 3. And the question is, you are building a system to distribute confidential training videos to employees. Using CloudFront, what method could be used to serve content that is stored in S3 but not publicly accessible from S3 directly? This is one of the tougher questions that they have in the sample exams, and if you're not sure about CloudFront, you should try and read up on about it and find out how it works. But briefly, from the definition from the AWS documentation, they state Amazon CloudFront is a web service that speeds up distribution of your static and dynamic web content such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and image files to your users. CloudFront delivers your content through a worldwide network of data centers called edge locations. So that's the basic definition of CloudFront. For this question, it is a tricky one, as I've stated before. So I put together a diagram, and that's it there on your screen. And yeah, so it's just basically showing you what the question is trying to ask, just to give you a bit of a visual representation, which is always handy. So what it's saying is we have content on our Amazon S3 bucket. It's going to be confidential training videos. And we don't want anyone just to be able to come along and get access to it from the public. And we want to use CloudFront to serve the content that is stored in S3. Okay, that's basically it. So a guy coming through CloudFront gets access to the S3 bucket, no problem. Someone going direct to the S3 bucket can't get there. So the important thing is what sort of access should be set up here. That's what they're asking. Okay, so let's have a look at the answers that they give you. So the first one is A, create an origin access identity, an OAI, for CloudFront and grant access to the objects in your S3 bucket to that OAI. Okay, now an OAI, we need to know what that is. We're going to talk about that a little later on. Just keep that in mind for the moment that when I first read this question, I didn't know what an origin of access identity was. So assuming that some of the people watching this video will not know either. So we'll get into some definitions later. B is add the CloudFront account security group, called whatever you want to call it, to the appropriate S3 bucket policy. Hopefully you know about S3 and bucket policies. If not, we're going to talk about that a bit. C, create an identity and access management, an IAM user for CloudFront and grant access to the objects in your S3 bucket to that IAM user. And lastly, create an S3 bucket policy that lists the CloudFront distribution ID as the principal and the target bucket as the Amazon resource name. So as always, I like to, if you don't understand a question and you're not sure, try and look for some hints in the question. So let's just take the first answer, A. So it's a tough question, as I've already previously stated. So what is an origin access identity? I guess that's the first thing we need to understand. So for the answer for A, so an OAI is sort of like an account for CloudFront distribution. So that's its definition. That to me sounding like definitely that answer cannot be ruled out at the moment. So A, it's up there as a candidate. So next up, in B, they talk about the CloudFront account security group, Amazon CFG, doesn't really matter what it's called, to the appropriate S3 bucket policy. Okay, so now what's a security group? The question I think in this that you have to ask yourself is, can you tie a security group to a bucket? For me, the answer is no. Reason being, security group is really tied to your instance, so it's at the instance level, not to be confused with NACLs, NACLs, network access control lists, which are firewalls at the subnet level. So we can rule out question or answer B, because you can't tie a security group to a bucket by that definition. And C is create an identity and access management, IAM. Now, IAMs can stop a user accessing S3 admin functions, but it can't stop users accessing specific objects. So it's not going to fit our purpose here, because we want to try and stop users from accessing specific objects, and IAM cannot do that. And D, the hint in part D, we're talking about principle. We're talking about a bucket policy and a principle, and back down here, the definition of that is, when configuring bucket policies, a principal is one or more named individuals in receipt of a particular policy statement. Again, it doesn't sound like it's got anything to do with granting access to objects in an S3 bucket. It is definitely talking about bucket policies, but the key here is a principal is one or more named individuals, not anybody coming in from outside via CloudFront. So by a process of elimination, I think that doesn't seem like the right answer to me. That one doesn't, that one doesn't. So B, C, D, anything to do with the security group and the IAM that they talked about, and that last bit about the principle, and which is tied to the bucket policy, doesn't seem like it's the right answer. So we're left with back to A, which our definition of that was an OAI is sort of like a service account for a CloudFront distribution. So it sounds like it's on the right path. So I'm just going to throw up another more detailed explanation of that, what CloudFront is, how an OAI ties into CloudFront. So this is from AWS documentation. So CloudFront is a CDN capability that distributes S3 objects geographically. An OAI is sort of like a service account for a CloudFront distribution. Using an OAI, you can restrict access to S3 content, effectively preventing direct access to content in S3, but still allowing CloudFront access to distribute that data. Okay, ding ding, bells should be going off. That is basically exactly what we're looking for. So using an OAI, you can restrict access to S3 content, effectively preventing direct access to content. Can't get direct access to content in S3, but still allowing CloudFront access to distribute that data. Typically, if you're using an Amazon S3 bucket as the origin for a CloudFront distribution, you grant everyone permission to read the objects in your bucket. Okay, that's just another addendum to it, but the critical part of it is here. So after a process of elimination and a little bit of reading of the AWS documentation, we come up with the answer that is A, create an origin access identity for CloudFront and grant access to the objects in your S3 bucket to that OAI. So if you're going to sit for the Solutions Architect Associate exam, definitely need to know CloudFront and how it works. Hopefully this has been a good explanation of how you can use CloudFront to serve content that is stored in S3. Read up on the documentation on CloudFront. There's a little bit more to it. Questions in the real exam don't get too in depth. If you can wrap your head around this and that explanation I've just given, I think you're going to have CloudFront nailed down for any other questions that may pop up in the exam. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this question 3 from the sample exam. I hope to be bringing you the rest of the questions very shortly and not such of a gap between each question, between 2 and 3. There was a couple of months. I've been pretty busy doing other things. So keep a lookout for question 4 coming up soon, and make sure you don't miss out. Just subscribe. Should be coming up on your screen now. And just subscribe to the channel if you already haven't, and we'll talk to you very soon. Thanks.